Okay. Today I'm joined by my guest Dan Light from Different Edge. How you doing, Dan?
I'm very well, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. We're going to talk about something that I'm quite passionate about because when my kids were sort of growing up and people would ask them what daddy does, one of them says he takes photos of houses for a living, which wasn't entirely inaccurate.
Yeah.
The others say he talks for a living, and and I think there's something very pertinent in that, and what we're going to be talking about in terms of choosing the right words and the right language. And it's not something that we're all born with innately. Yes, you might be a very good salesperson. You might have the right sort of personality to be a good salesperson, but you do need training and you do need to know the combinations of words and the right things to say that open doors and lead to, I think, a better quality of conversation, really, Dan, more than anything else. Before we get into that, could you give us some of your background, how you started Different Edge and who you are and why you're here?
Yeah. So I'm Dan Light, yes, founder of Different Edge. So my background predominantly is leading sales teams and service teams, actually, and spent some time in quite a successful consultancy, working with FTSE firms down to kind of scale ups, looking at three things: looking at the culture, looking at the climate of behaviors in teams, and the conversation at the front end. And it always fascinated me, words and language and the lexicon that gets involved in organizations is my kind of passion, if you like. My wife can't believe it. She's like, words. I'm like, yeah, I know. She said, well, I don't need training. I've been talking since four and I'm all right. Well, fair enough. Um, and how Different Edge came around, if I'm honest, Dave, is twofold. On the first aspect of it, it was a personal decision. So I was kind of working for a really successful ed tech firm, doing a lot of travel. And my youngest son has got autism, and I knew that the writing was on the wall around education and possibly having to homeschool. So I started to slowly build a situation where I could be flexible for him. So I'm being completely upfront and honest about that. Secondly, as I said before, it is my passion to help leaders and sales leaders and organizations because sales can be complex. So it doesn't have to be simplistic, but we can make it simpler. And I don't know who ever told me this, but I always kind of live by the kind of maxim is that the problems in an organization are always the cause of or solved by the quality of the conversations that people have.
Yeah.
And the right questions at the right time to the right person can change your life. And I've actually experienced that. So I've yes. So in terms of Different Edges as an idea, as a genesis of an idea, that's where it came from. And I found myself with coming up to 2.5 years now, and I found myself working with again, quite large firms in terms of FTSE 100 firms, through to scale ups, through to a few one man bands recently. I then found myself into property, which is the conversation we're having. But we can go into a bit more detail around that. But I have no property experience whatsoever. Just to put that out there, I am no property guru.
Don't worry, you pick it up very easily. We're very low barrier to entry in our industry, but you either sort of develop a passion for it or not. And I think part of what we do is it's a people business still at its core. And I think that's why that language and the way that we talk to people is so key. You're helping sort of sales leaders and effectively everything in property, whether you're in management or sales, it doesn't really matter. It all comes back to a point of sale. There is somebody that is being sold to somewhere. So you're helping sales leaders. What typically are they looking for when they come to you?
Well, most of them they're doing all right. Um, they're doing okay. It's just I think if one word springs to mind that I hear a lot is about consistency. It's inconsistent. So they've either got leads that they're not converting, they've got great people that are almost kind of turning up, not showing up in terms of how they're driving the business and their accounts and opportunities forward. So they're doing okay, but they just want a different way of looking at things. Maybe they want some challenge on some perspectives, and they want some real hard, fast, and I'll be honest, simple ways to have better conversations that drive better outcomes, if I'm being completely honest.
And so when you then get invited into these businesses, like you say, they're doing okay. They're established businesses. They have their own sort of habits and processes. There's an internal narrative, isn't there, really? Every company has like a almost like a theme or a tone that you can pick up in the way that they address people internally, but also externally.
Yeah.
What are the sort of things that you're looking for then when you come into to a business?
Well, I mean, there's lots of ways. So, depending on the kind of the type of program, I will spend some time doing a little bit of a diagnostic. And again, I'm back to my wife can't believe it sometimes. But a great example, and I suppose a simple example is sometimes I spend time in some of the meetings and just listening to the types of language that is used and predominantly the statements that are made over the quality of the questions that are asked. Um, and it's fascinating because people can't see past. Well, we always have this meeting, everyone's contributed, we've got ideas, but me as a neutral doing my kind of like little scoreboard against a framework that I use is it's quite low quality in terms of what people are asking. Challenge is often missing, and invariably, and you probably experience this in terms of a state agency where maybe you've got a couple of kind of senior bods in a state agency with a few branches. Those are the people that drive the conversation, and so thoughts, ideas, possibilities, and new ways of driving business and opportunities are often quashed, not intentionally, but just through the lack of care of language and questions that are being asked.
It's interesting. It is fascinating. I've sat in enough of those kind of very depressing Monday morning meetings, where typically, the phones are all off, but it's an all hands meeting. Everybody's sort of sat there, and management has one sort of narrative. The staff have a very different, or the team have a very different narrative going on. And those meetings can either be the rocket fuel that gets you through your week,
Yeah.
or it will be the thing that sort of ties you down and kind of drags you down throughout that week as well. So it can work both ways. And I think the key is the sort of narrative and the tone, the atmosphere, and the quality, like you say, the quality of the questions or statements that are being made. If there's too many statements and there's not enough questions, or it's not a welcoming environment for creative questioning, it really does sort of it quashes that creativity in the room, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think you work in any industry very quickly. You have the kind of curse of knowledge. You run a business, you've got all the things going on and running a business, and people want to shortcut the answer. What's the answer? Well, like I was at school, David. I'm sure you were. For the best of my knowledge, I tried to attend, um, and you put on the spot. What's the answer? And you know that there's a kind of 50-50. I'm either going to get it right or I'm going to get it
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
Um, Whereas if we were curious and to say, well, okay, what possibly could be the answer? What might we possibly be missing? And take the pressure off a little bit. What we want people to feel comfortable to generate ideas and gently and tactfully challenge each other to get to a place where we've now got 3 or 4 possibilities, and of those possibilities, this one seems to be the best course of action.
yeah.
So a lot of time, money, and energy is wasted in trying to shortcut and just kind of a lot of let's just do what we've done before. I've spoken to a CEO of a firm recently, and he was like, "Yeah, but my guys are experienced salespeople. Speaking, it's like riding a bike, isn't it? I said, well, yeah, we can all ride a bike, right? But could you ride a bike to the level of one of those Red Bull, the Red Bull guys that
Yeah.
go down on a BMX and do a backflip?" He's like, no. so we can have a sales conversation, but can you do it in a way where you are understanding what is happening in the brain of the other person that drives commitment and drives the influence not manipulation, but gets them to understand and gets them to feel excited about the thing that you've got, rather than just go through and tick boxes.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You mentioned that you're not from the property industry,
No.
but what brought you to us then?
So, despite getting sacked from an estate agency when I was about 18,
Oh, we've all been there,
we
mate. We've
won't.
all been.
I, I think I lasted about 2 weeks, so it's not my finest moment. Um, I ended up coaching a small business owner who had a branch through a kind of just a local recommendation, and through that, kind of, it was quite interesting. Then, funny how these things happen out of the blue. A conversation with I Am Property. Um, Obviously, quite a forward-thinking kind of prop tech in your space around auction, and definitely on the same page, and struck up a great relationship with him. And I've actually been working with them for about 18 months now. We've added masses of value. So the results are ridiculous. So much so that we're nominated for a national sales award with
Yeah, I
those
know.
guys.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we've worked across their conveyancing teams, across their completions teams, their auction specialists. We're currently going through their field guys at the moment. And it's all the stuff I talk about, just kind of shifting the culture, shifting the conversations, giving guys really practical, easy, simplistic. Change can happen in moments, not months. And they're definitely feeling the benefits of that. And I think that's now led to conversations with other property firms. So again, I'm not a property expert by any stretch. That's for other people. But what I can do is I can help businesses see things differently, put things in place that change the conversation internally and externally, but that ultimately drives pounds and pence in the pocket.
So, going back to who you work with and how you work with them, is there a sweet? I mean, you've mentioned a range of different companies. Iron Property themselves are quite a big outfit. Is there a sweet spot for you in terms of size of company, or is it kind of can you tailor it to any size?
Um, I mean, in principle, it could be any size, but where I think you can create real momentum, and I think a lot of changes around energy, isn't it? We've all been there, right? If I want to lose weight and it's just me in a pair of trainers, it's unlikely to happen, even though I kind of know how. So what I tend to do is we have a framework where we work through. So if you can get a group of people creating that energy, a group of people on a collective mission, that's always the exciting thing. So I would say anything from like 100 to 500 people is where we've seen the biggest gains, where they've got the mechanisms in place. We can drive that support for the people that need it, and we can create that real energy and momentum.
Talk about energy and momentum because I think we're obviously used to talking like you and I are now in a virtual capacity, and I can feel the energy. But it is a lot of people feel that it's harder to convey that. There's a lot of people moving back to the office now, feeling that face to face is the way forward. What's the ideal for you? I know it's not a one size fits all, but
Yeah.
as a trainer, if you like, as somebody that needs to convey that energy over to people, do you prefer face to face or virtual? Is there a place for
Yeah,
both?
I think we're human beings, and we're talking about driving change, getting people to see things, feel things differently. So I would always advocate that there's a space for that human interaction, to hold space with each other. We all know, right? You have a tactfully challenging conversation. You can understand where someone's coming from. So I would always advocate that across all of our programs, there's always a face-to-face element. However, with the rise of technology, which is fantastic, and of course, costs as well, and being pragmatic about things, I like to kind of blend both. So we can definitely do some of the parts virtually, where it's appropriate. I talk through clients around how that works. But I always advocate, if you are looking for change, if you're looking for the results, there's always a face-to-face element of that.
I'm a big advocate of that as well. I think that there's a lot that can be lost in translation sometimes if you don't,
Yeah.
gauge the temperature of the room, the conversation, the body. That if I can't use my hands to talk, then you're not getting the full experience, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. If you're sitting with a group of people, just to sit in silence sometimes is nice.
yeah,
Never underestimate that silence. It's like we can all feel it. But you can't feel it virtually. You think you're the only one. You think, hello, people start checking their microphones. So
Yeah, the microphones have gone
yeah,
up. So business leaders or business owners that are sort of watching this now and they're sort of looking at different ways that they can shape things up. But I think what they want, if you ask them, is more. They're kind of happy with what they've got, but they would like more. They'd like more leads. They'd like more productivity. They'd like more sales, more results,
yeah.
and dot 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 more money. Um, what would be one thing that you would say to them today if you've got that opportunity?
I think it's to go back to the very kind of fundamentals of your business. It's a couple of things really. So first of all, is around if I were to follow you in your slipstream for a week, how would I know what the expectations were on behaviors? What would the ground rules be in your organization? What would I see, and how many times would you kind of be able to show me? There's a great example. There's a great. Often people don't know, and we will just
Yeah.
assume that people kind of well, they sure. I've told them once on their first morning. I'm sure they get it, and then we're scratching our heads, going, well, "Why are they doing that? Why are they focused on this? Why aren't they prioritizing this?" So definitely, I would. Everyone does an audit with a spreadsheet, but very few people do like a kind of behavioural audit. So once a quarter, I'd be going, okay, the behaviours that we know make the difference in this business, I'd be kind of looking at those. Um, and I'd also be looking at how people are supported in the moment. So how close are you as a leader in terms of proximity? Because when people have had conversations, they'll forget. So creating space, creating time to be around the business and talking to people in real time and getting their points of view and how they're feeling about things, I think is critical. So if for me, I can never accept if you're a business owner, which I am, I don't have time is the laziest statement a leader can make. Unfortunately, it's just true.
I
What you're saying is
I
you haven't prioritized the time on the things that count.
Now, do you know what? It's music to my ears because there is this internal debate going on in the industry. If you speak to thought leaders and you go to the conferences and you hear, they will talk about trying to move business leaders away from actually getting involved in the day-to-day nitty-gritty of working in the business, and they want them to work on the business, to step away and effectively delegate everything downwards. However, we miss a trick, don't we, if we remove that personality from the business altogether? Because I think it's important. I mean, if you look at sort of influential business leaders out there, and I'll take one as an example, somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk, who, there's obviously an awful lot online about him and how he runs his businesses, but the one thing he will tell you is that you've got to spend time talking to the people in the business, listening to them. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed that sometimes when people think that working on a business completely absolves them from having to deal with people in the business at all.
Yeah.
I think that's a big mistake.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And then where are we back to? Now we're back to listening. We're back to choosing our language and our questions because we all know. I mean, I can say for myself, the first thing out of your mouth, Dave, is normally the worst thing, right? When people just don't think. So we go, "What do you think of that?" And I give an answer. But if you've got that time and you've booked that time and you kind of know, I am with this person now, and we're asking really, just good questions. Think about the interaction you just had with a vendor, for example. What do you think they were feeling? How did it go for you? What did
Yeah.
you notice? And people then become used to having those types of conversations. So that guess what? They get better at articulating it, as opposed to this is out the blue. My manager never speaks to me, and all of a sudden now they're asking me deep questions like, "What's going on?" So it's about the rhythms that we create culturally and the conversations we have day to day. And it does sound fluffy, I get it, but the frameworks that we can put in place and how we hold people accountable for doing those things—that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where you start to see results.
I'm a great believer in all of this. And you know what I love? I do millions of these interviews. I spend my life on Zoom talking to suppliers, trainers, agents, and genuinely, it's a great opportunity for me to sort of absorb stuff and learn from the best out there. But we always ask people for standout statistics. And very often they'll be boasting about market share and percentages and how much they can increase this or that or the other. We asked you for statistics and you gave us these, and
Did
they're
I?
beautiful, so I'm going to read them out. But you said that 4-year-olds ask up to 390 questions a day.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Teenagers on average will ask 20 to 30 questions. Now, here's the shocker. Adults in the workplace and in a workplace settings can ask as little as 6 questions a day. And it goes to, I think we run into, there's two things that struck me there. We run into danger, don't we, where we think we know it all and there's no more questions left to ask. But also think it's about the environment that we set up and whether we encourage those questions to be asked. When those toddlers are learning to talk and so on, we encourage them to spit out any question they've got, and we
Yeah.
applaud every little suggestion they've got to make because it's the most lovely
Yeah.
thing to see this personality and this human being coming together. But somewhere along the way, we almost crush it out of people, and
That's right.
it's a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
shame, isn't it?
yeah. It gets beaten out of us, doesn't
Yeah.
it? And then you're yeah. Who's got a question? Oh no, you're looking around thinking, I think, I hope someone has.
I
Yeah,
think it's even the school system sometimes. We,
yeah,
we don't encourage people to question stuff as much. You've got to sit there and kind of absorb it. And I think,
100%. And with
yeah,
and you've been through it yourself. I've got two teenagers, and everything. You hate to say, but everything we're taught, like don't copy people. Keep the answers to yourself. Well, that's the opposite of success in business, isn't it? Like
yeah,
copy the
exactly.
very best people.
If it works for somebody else, copy it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Do it yourself. No, involve others. That's a great idea. Let's involve others. Get more people around the table. Don't answer back. No, absolutely answer back. Seek clarity on the questions. So we've got faulty thinking, and that goes into the workplace. And like I say to a lot of people, it's not a blame game. You may know, for example, about a estate agency selling houses and all the nuances and the things that go around that. But leading a team of people is a craft in itself. And you've got to create the time to up your craft around dealing with human beings, and they will then go and execute the things around the estate agency, for example, that you need to. And that's what I help leaders, managers, and teams do. What I would say is also you can get a little bit up your own backside with this stuff. But sometimes they're shocked. They go, well, how do we do it? Well, there's no right way of doing
yeah,
anything, really, is there? So there's just the most helpful way in the situation we find ourselves. So you might like this and you might like this. Let's run through it and see if you do. And if you think it's helpful and you think it helps you think, why don't we execute it more often? Should we just go?
yeah.
So I'm very much beware the experts, I think is the, I'm not an expert at anything, which is probably doing me a
Well, there you
sales
go. That's
disservice.
the anti-hero ending to our conversation. You've done yourself out of a job there. Now,
Oh,
in terms of people sort of accessing your services, I know that you're very easy to talk to, but I suppose the way that you get to know them is to sort of have a bit of an initial Zoom call, understand more about the business, what their objectives are. Is there more to it than that?
no, I've got eight questions. So if you can stomach eight quick questions on a scale of 1 to 10, based on that, normally people go, I'd like to explore these two, please. So we can have a quick 5 minute chat. No sales job from me, just to kind of, and I often have just really good conversations with people. So absolutely, visit the website, differentedge.co.uk. Catch me on LinkedIn for my sins. I'm always on kind of LinkedIn, like posting stuff, seeing great stuff that people are doing. And just get in touch that way, all three of you guys.
Fantastic, fantastic, Dan. Thank you very much for your time today.
Cheers, David. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.